New audio recordings featuring House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy indicate that he was really worried about members of his own party engaging in discourse and public rhetoric that incited violence. And those were certainly credible concerns, legitimate concerns, especially since many of the conversations that we're about to share with you took place after the January 6th Capitol riots. Now, while he was worried about his own party inciting violence behind the scenes, publicly he went out of his way to defend members of the Republican caucus. And I want to give you a little bit of context before we get to the first audio tape. Now, McCarthy talked to other congressional Republicans about wanting to rein in multiple hardliners who were deeply involved in Donald Trump's efforts to contest the 2020 election and undermine the peaceful transfer of power. McCarthy did not follow through on the sterner steps that some Republicans encouraged him to take, opting instead to seek a political accommodation with the most extreme members of the GOP in the interests of advancing his own career. And that is a trend, a pattern really, that we've seen over and over again with Republican leadership. Behind the scenes, they're concerned about what's happening to the Republican Party. They want to purge the Republican Party of these more extreme elements. But publicly, they will bow their heads and go along with what the extreme elements want, because turns out that the Republican voters favor those extreme elements. Now, I'm gonna share the first tape with you. This is audio from January 10th, 2021. McCarthy is having a conference call with Republican leadership, and here's what he had to say about his own concerns.
The other thing that we have to do is these members on either whatever position you are, calling out other members, that stuff's got to stop, especially in this nature. So when I get up right here, I'm gonna call Gate. But anything else we see, don't assume I see everything, don't assume I know everything. But we gotta have one central point. So I mean, if you can bring this stuff to Dan, Natalie, or Lugansky, so you can have it. But I mean, don't sit back around. It's gonna be you guys personally. Tension is too high. The country is too crazy. I do not want to look back and think we caused something or we missed something and someone got hurt. I don't want to play politics with any of that.
Tension is crazy. He's worried about the climate in the country. He's worried about people getting hurt as a result of members of his own party using rhetoric that incites violence. We got to do something about it. Now, again, this audio is from January 10th, 2021. This is just a few days after the riots took place. And the two members of Congress that he's specifically referring to in this context are Mo Brooks and Matt Gaetz. And so Brooks and Gaetz were the prime offenders in the eyes of GOP leaders. Brooks addressed the January 6th rally on the National Mall, which of course preceded the Capitol riot, using incendiary language. After January 6th, Gaetz went on television to attack multiple Republicans who had criticized Trump, including Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming, a member of the leadership team. In fact, if you can remember, following Liz Cheney's criticisms toward members of her own party, following the January 6th riots, you had people like Representative Matt Gaetz, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, essentially go to Liz Cheney's home state to do rallies, essentially calling her out and trying to work against her. And so nothing that McCarthy was concerned about actually ended up leading to positive changes or positive results. Like I said, like any other coward, he just kind of bowed his head and went along with what the extreme elements wanted, because at the end of the day, he's looking out for his own political career. He knows, he acknowledges that these are people who incite violence in the country. They lead to toxic divisions even within the Republican Party. But what can he do? He can't speak out against them too aggressively. He would face political consequences, and really all he genuinely cares about, what takes priority over people's lives, over people's safety, over the our own democratic process, is where he stands in this political system, what kind of leadership roles he can maintain as someone who is part of the Republican Party. Now, Representative Kevin McCarthy and Representative Steve Scalise, along with a number of aides, engaged in basically criticizing Matt Gaetz and the behavior that he engaged in. In fact, they wanted some action taken against him. So in this next audio recording, you'll get a little sense of how concerned they were about Matt Gaetz specifically. Let's watch.
I just got something sent now about Newsmax, something Matt Gaetz said, where he's calling people's names out, saying an anti-Trump in this type of atmosphere. And some of the other places, this is serious stuff people are doing that has to stop. If I'm getting briefing, I'm going to get another one from the FBI tomorrow. This is serious. To cut this out. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's potentially illegal what he's doing. Well, he's putting people in jeopardy, and he doesn't need to be doing this. We saw what people would do in the Capitol, and these people came prepared with rope, with everything else.
What Matt Gaetz is engaging in is potentially illegal. Really interesting commentary there. Because again, this is what they think, a private conference call with Republican leadership. So they don't think that any of this is ever gonna get out. But the New York Times obtained audio of this conference call from someone who provided that audio to them, by the way. And turns out that now we know for sure that you have Republican leadership saying one thing privately and then defending the problem publicly. On January 10th, during this call, McCarthy said he planned to speak with Gaetz and ask him not to attack other lawmakers by name. The following day, in a larger meeting for all House Republicans, McCarthy pleaded with lawmakers not to incite, but rather to respect one another. So we've got one more piece of audio to get to. Let's take a listen to that, and then I'll fill in the blanks.
The briefings that I'm getting, you can incite something else. The country is very divided, as we know this. Let's not put any member, I don't care who they are, Republican, Democrat, or any person not even in Congress. Watch our words closely. I get these reports on a weekly basis. I've seen something I haven't seen before. So I'm asking all of you, I've called some of you personally, and I want you to know what I'm hearing. Be careful. I know you want to defend your vote, you want to defend your position, and sometimes we get emotional about that. And part of our defense is that we explain where somebody else was at. That brings damage. Do not raise another member's name on a television.
So again, this is a call that happens with like the broader Republican caucus, and you can tell that his rhetoric is a little different. He's a little softer. Like, I can understand. Sometimes we get emotional. We just be careful. It's really interesting to kind of notice that difference, that distinction in tone between the earlier call that happened on January 10th versus the earlier call that happened versus the call that happens with a broader group of Republican lawmakers. And by the way, there are other interesting examples that were talked about in the previous call that I want to share with you. For instance, Representative Barry Moore, who's a far-right Alabama conservative, tweeted on the weekend after January 6th about the fatal shooting of rioter Ashley Babbitt by a member of the Capitol Police Force, noting that it was a black police officer who shot the white female veteran, and added, that doesn't fit the narrative. Essentially implying that as long as it's a black cop shooting a white person, no one cares. That's the point that he was trying to make, completely discarding of the argument that she was one of the rioters. She's trying to crawl through a broken window on a door in order to get to where members of Congress were. And she's part of a group of people who were chanting things like hang Mike Pence. So she posed a threat to members of Congress who were trying to escape that room as she was trying to crawl into it. I wish she hadn't have gotten shot. It's a tragic story. I hate that all of these individuals were tricked into thinking that the election was somehow stolen from their favored candidate. And people lost their lives as a result of that, both literally in the case of Ashley Babbitt, and also when you look at the number of people who are now going to spend time in prison after being duped by Donald Trump and his cronies. But nonetheless, immediately after that comment was read aloud on the call, McCarthy expressed a wish that the big social media companies would ban some members of the Republican conference, as they had done with Trump after the insurrection. Can't they take their Twitter accounts away too, McCarthy asked? Can't they? Can't they just take their accounts away too? Please, Twitter, please, please, please ban these extreme right-wingers from our party. Please do it. But publicly, the message is very different. Publicly, the message is, oh, the left is trying to silence and censor. They're so censorious, the left, the left, the left, the left. Behind the scenes, McCarthy's like, yo, can we do something about these Twitter accounts? A little bit of a problem. But publicly, and that's the point, publicly McCarthy does what he's told, like a good little boy. He does what he's told because he's willing to swallow his pride if that means he can maintain a position of power within the Republican Party. Is that what a leader does? Does a leader bow his head to individuals who threaten him, individuals who coerce him, individuals who he knows happen to be not only bad for the Republican Party, but bad for the country? Is that what a leader does? I mean, this country is run by a bunch of pathetic puppets, narcissistic, self-interested fools who have no interest in real leadership, but are willing to take orders from the worst people in this country just so they can maintain their position of power. And that's who Kevin McCarthy is. And again, in the end, McCarthy really did nothing to reprimand or censure or essentially serve consequences for people who he fears are inciting violence in the country. In his determination to become Speaker of the House after the 2022 elections, McCarthy has spent much of the last year forging a closer political partnership with the far right, showing little public concern that his most extreme colleagues could instigate bloodshed with their overheated or hateful rhetoric. The Times continues to write that in recent months, they give specific examples, McCarthy has opposed punishing Republican members of Congress who have been accused of inciting violence, including Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and most recently, Representative Paul Gosar of Arizona, who posted an animated video on social media that depicted him killing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. McCarthy also ignored a remark by Brooks, Mo Brooks, of course, last year when, after a man was arrested in connection with a bomb threat to the Capitol, the Alabama Republican said he understood citizens' anger directed at dictatorial socialism and its threat to liberty, freedom, and the very fabric of American society. And really, that's the other thing I want to talk about just briefly. Not only are these Republicans insanely weak, not only are they cowards, and you can tell I'm trying to hold back from using certain words that I can't use on the show, they're also just woefully stupid. To look at this country right now, a country that effectively has no real federal social safety net for people, and claim that it is a socialist country under the leadership of Joe Biden is laughable. Joe Biden, the president who told the Wall Street donors who were funding his primary race that nothing will fundamentally change. That guy is a socialist, really? So either Mo Brooks is just a liar, which is, I mean, that's certainly the case. But I think he's also incredibly stupid because so many Republicans are somehow convinced that we live in a socialist country. A socialist country, by the way, that has tens of thousands of people living on the streets in Los Angeles alone, which is considered a democratic utopia. We have no real social safety net for people in this country. We have no support for young couples who want to start a family. How is this a socialist country again? I just want one reporter to ask that question. Can you please define what socialism means to you? And then after they spout whatever nonsense they spout, ignorant garbage, I would like the journalist to maybe show them or tell them what socialism actually means. It is amazing that this country is run by people like this. But anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent. Now, some of the Republicans who were discussed in those audio recordings have responded, including Representative Matt Gaetz, who says, while I was protecting President Trump from impeachment, They were protecting Liz Cheney from criticism. I don't really think it was about Liz Cheney. I think it was really about what the rhetoric coming from people like Matt Gaetz leads to. What we saw on January 6th didn't just happen in a vacuum. There were people inciting it within the Republican Party for months, really. With all these accusations of mail-in voter fraud, all this garbage that we were hearing over and over and over again, right-wing media colluding with these right-wing politicians to essentially spout a narrative that was not only inaccurate, but incredibly dangerous, which is why we now have 35% of this country that refuses to believe that the election was completely fair, that there was no voter fraud, and that Joe Biden, whether you like him or not, won that election. 35% of the country thinks that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. How are you supposed to unite a country like that? But dividing and conquering is the right wing's bread and butter. This is what they have engaged in for a very long time. They love to sell fear. That's what they do when it comes to various disenfranchised groups of people. They like to fearmonger about them, and that's how they win elections. If they had anything else to offer, they would focus on that. Instead, they provide this illusion of governing by focusing on fear-mongering about the others, fear-mongering about the election, fear-mongering about how rights are being taken away, guns are being taken away, transgender people are somehow taking your rights away. Just insane fear-mongering day in, day out. That is their bread and butter, and they'll continue to do it. And they'll lean into it harder in coming years because that's all they've got. What do you think they're gonna do? They're gonna try to make your life better? You think they're gonna focus on policies that are going to help alleviate some of the economic anxiety that Americans are facing? That would mean they would go against their corporate donors, and they got some fundraising to do. Mo Brooks also released a statement. Kevin McCarthy spoke before knowing the facts, Brooks said, adding that he did not recall McCarthy ever speaking with him directly about his speech. Well, it's probably telling the truth. I would not be surprised if McCarthy was such a coward that he couldn't even get himself to hit Mo Brooks up and have a conversation with him about his rhetoric. Just like a real leader would do, right? Bow his head, take orders like a little boy, because all he cares about is his political career. Alpha males are not back. In fact, the one silver lining of the Trump era is it is abundantly clear now that all these strong men have always been cowards and they always will be.